Newcastle City Library. My name is Chloe and I have prepared a presentation focusing on the future possible challenges to the Newcastle City Library's collections and how they can be approached and overcome. Today I will be discussing disaster planning, what it is, why it is necessary, possible disasters that may affect the collection, and how to create a disaster plan. I will also be discussing the collection preservation, what it is, why it's important, and how to plan and implement collection preservation techniques. Disaster planning. What is disaster planning? Disasters, natural and man-made, can mean the loss of material, text and goods that cannot be repaired easily, if at all, and will need to be replaced. The purpose of disaster planning is to minimize damages, promote effective reactions, and ensure the safety of materials and people involved, such as staff and customers. Disaster planning is preparing for management of emergency situations, such as mitigation, preparedness, response and recovery, Chartoff and Roman 2020. By being prepared, the Newcastle City Library is able to efficiently carry out all emergency action plans and practices with minimal damages and losses to the library's materials and goods, whilst also ensuring the safety of the staff and customers. Here is a breakdown of disaster planning. Mitigation. Mitigation means reducing risk of loss from the occurrence of any undesirable event. This enables the Newcastle City Library to minimize damages in the case of a disaster and promote the safety of the materials and goods within the library. Preparedness refers to the creation of risk assessments, action plans, and policies and procedures. Risk assessments, action plans, policies, and procedures allow for all staff to access the same information to reduce confusion and increase efficiency during a disaster. Response. The intervention and assistance of staff during an emergency or immediately after. Being able to respond quickly and effectively can mean the difference between massive loss of goods and damages and minimal loss and damage. Recovery. How to respond to unplanned disasters and the restoration of improvement of facilities in order to reduce the risk of disaster reoccurring. Plans are more effective if staff are trained in using the disaster response plan, and the plan is easily accessible when it's needed most. Disaster planning and D. Recovery enables the library to be able to repair damages, replace goods, and maintain a healthy business, as being closed too long can mean a loss of customers. Why is disaster planning necessary for the Newcastle City Library? Disaster planning is necessary in order to maintain the safety of staff and customers, protection and preservation of materials within the library, both paper and digital, maintenance of building and furniture, and to ensure that the Newcastle City Library is able to take appropriate actions during a possible disaster. Possible disasters that may affect the Newcastle City Library. Fire, earthquake, flood, materials and text damaged by customers, break-ins and vandalization, and theft. Here is a table showing some natural disasters that have occurred in Newcastle and when they most recently occurred. Fire 2016, Wickham Building Fire, Photos, Video 2016. Earthquake 1989, Earthquake Newcastle 1989, Australian Disaster Resilience Knowledge Hub, ND. Flood October 2020, Grumman's 2022. Disaster plan creation and implementation. In order to have an effective disaster plan, the assessment will need the input of more than one person. They will likely use the following steps. Step 1. Identify possible disasters along with hazards, risks, and possible prevention. Step 2. Create risk assessment and action plan. Step 3. Review with all staff to ensure that all staff are trained in and able to implement action plan. Step 4. Have disaster action plan easily accessible. Step 5. Run practice drills to ensure the disaster action plan works efficiently. Step 6. Review disaster action plan often to ensure it is up to date and all staff are familiar with the procedure. Disaster risk assessment. On this slide, an example of a partial fire risk assessment can be seen. Potential hazard, building fire. People at risk and how. Everyone in building may collapse, smoke inhalation, and burns. Procedures to be taken. Evacuate to designated fire evacuation area, call emergency services. Potential hazard: material, text, or fire of technology. People at risk and how: people in building near fire, burns, smoke inhalation, possible toxic fumes if electrical. Procedures to be taken: if safe to do so, a designated fire safety staff will use a fire extinguisher while everyone is being evacuated. To minimize damage, call emergency services. Collection preservation. What is collection preservation? Collection preservation is the long-term maintenance of texts and materials. This includes the care and treatment of physical and digital materials and texts, including all of the books, pictures, maps, manuscripts, photographs, audio-visual material, website, and social media within the Newcastle City Library's collection. Through the collection preservation, the Newcastle City Library will be able to keep and continue their collection for many years with minimal damages. Collection preservation minimizes man-made damages. Why is collection preservation important for the Newcastle City Library? Collection preservation is important for the safekeeping and management of materials and texts within the Newcastle City Library, as it promotes the long-term care and treatment of these various materials. Collection care ensures that the library's rich and extensive collections are available to all those who wish to use them. Collection preservation planning and implementation. There are multiple collection preservation techniques currently available, such as framing, limiting light damages, reducing pollution risks, digitalization, and photocopying. In order to implement proper collection preservation practices, the Newcastle City Library will need to discuss the various preservation techniques and decide on what techniques suit the collections. What needs to be considered? Material and text types. Example, a CD can be backed up digitally and saved on a hard drive for preservation. Which technique suits the resource best? Different techniques will need to be applied to different resources. Quality of collection preservation technology. How long has this technology been used? How effective it is? Faults that may occur, and costs for using and maintaining the collection preservation technology. Training of staff in using the selected techniques. This means ensuring staff are trained in the care and handling of collections, including paintings, textiles, objects, photographs, negative, glass plate, and flexible, large format items like maps and newspapers, flat paper items, books, and microforms, preservation, ND. Once these have been discussed, the Newcastle City Library can begin to use the preservation technologies and techniques in order to safely maintain the collection for use well into the future. Example, beginning to copy data onto a hard drive or online drive portal. In conclusion, through disaster planning and collection preservation, the Newcastle City Library is able to prevent most major damages and losses to the library's collection, as well as minimizing damages to the library's text and materials by acting quickly and effectively according to the disaster action plans in place, ensuring that the Newcastle City Library is able to preserve and use their collections for many years, and that, in the case of a disaster, the collections, staff, and customers in the buildings are safe.